Well, thank you very much. My name is Alejandro Covalin. I'm the CTO and one of the founders of Spark Biomedical. It is a company focused on bringing wearable neuromodulation to market. Today, I'll talk to you about our women's health initiative. It's OhmBody. Okay, so very briefly, I'll give you some background on the company, background on specific, the women's health. We'll talk about wearables, market, a little bit of mechanism of action. I will give you some examples, preclinical examples on hemostasis, which is probably the least known of the applications from you guys. Then I'll talk about our clinical results in women and menstrual health specifically. First, Spark is divided into three main brands. Sparrow is in neurological health, stress, resilience, PTSD withdrawal, pain to some extent. We have completed 7 clinical trials. We have 10 ongoing. We are on market for withdrawal, specifically in US and Canada. We are we're talking to pharma company to bring a combination product to market. 5 liters is a hemostasis solution focusing on surgical traumatic blood loss and bleeding disorders. We have 1 preclinical study finished, 3 clinicals, and 3 ongoing clinical trials. And then our women's health initiative, which is OhmBody. As you will see in a minute, OhmBody is basically a combination between the neurological health and the hemostasis solutions. We have 2 clinical trials completed. 1 is ongoing. We have received about $25 million in non-diluting funding from DOD, NIH, and the Wellcome Trust. Those are So let me just jump right into our topic here, which is women's health. I'm pretty much, I think most of you would know that there is a gender gap in salaries. We all kind of hear that all the time, but there is one that we're probably less aware of. And this is the healthcare gap that exists between genders. As a male, I never realized there was a gap there, but I'm sure many women know that. This gap actually comes from not including women in clinical trials. And this was ongoing up until very late in the 1990s. The first women doctor in the US graduated in the mid-1800s in the US. So before that, there was really no women physicians. And the reason why people didn't want to include women in clinical trials is basically because for the reason that you should. Basically, they have an hormonal cycle that is strong compared to men, and of course, when you collect the data, depends on where in that cycle you are will affect the data. So people didn't want to have that detail in the data, so they use male. So it's more robust data, but of course, it's like looking for something where it's light and not where you lost it, I guess. That led to tragedies, very big tragedies. Thalidomide was one of the probably most infamous one, where 10,000 birth defects were the result of it because it was never tested in women. Then you have the FDA trying to protect women, actually banning women participating in clinical phase 1 and phase 2 trials without mandating that they would have to be included in phase 3 trials. So go figure who will include a group of people that was not included in 1 and 2 in your third. It was not until 1993 that the NIH actually mandated that women had to be included in clinical trials. Of course, it was only mandated for clinical trials that they were supporting. And it was not until 2013 that the FDA actually recognized that there was a need to have different doses, for example, in women and men, basically recognizing that there is a difference in physiology. Let me move to the next one. We have time, but there are many examples of different pharma that affect differently women and men. Let's move to the next one. Now, let's move into wearable technology, and you'll see why we'll talk about wearable technology, because I think it is one potential avenue to narrow that gap. Wearable technology is supposed to grow to $200 billion by 2030, led by the US, Europe next, and Asia, mainly Japan, South Korea, and India. And then you have China at the bottom today, very far away from the others. Now, if you look into the adoption rates, it was, I think, obvious that there was going to be an age difference in adoption, right? The younger generations basically adopting the wearable technology much quicker. But very interestingly, there is also a gender gap here. Women are adopting wearable technology much, much faster than male. If you look at the technology, the wearables, you can see that overall, more than half of the wearable technologies being offered are actually targeting females. It's a femtech. Now, I don't know what came first, if because they're adopting it faster, you have more applications, or if you have more applications, is why they are actually adopting it faster. But the fact is that you can say that women's are actually driving the wearable market. If you go into the femtech wearable market, basically follows the same exact trend than the overall wearable market, projected to reach $130 billion by 2030. Now, let me move into why using transcutaneous activation of vagus and trigeminal nerves could actually help. Now I'm really jumping into what we're actually doing for women's health in our first indication, which has to do with menstrual health. There are two main paths through which we deliver this therapy, or through which the therapy is being activated or processed. You have central pathways, you have peripheral pathways. Central pathways deal with cognition, attention, depression and mood, and pain reduction via central pathways. Peripheral, you have gut motility, the hemostasis approach that goes through the spleen. I'll talk about it a little bit in a second. And the peripheral pain, and I'm really focusing only on cramps that actually come from ischemic pain. When you activate the parasympathetics, you actually get a vasodilation in the uterus, which alleviates the source of the pain. So you have a dual reduction in pain, and centrally activated and a peripheral one. Now, before I show you how the hemostasis aspect works, the mechanism of action, and hemostasis you'll see has to do with blood reduction. And I guess is the least known of, like I mentioned, of the mechanisms of actions of these. I want to share with you two preclinical trials. One was done with implantable VNS. The second one was with non-implanted electrodes. This here, if you can play that movie, I don't think I can do it from here. What I'm showing you here is a tail clip. One animal was treated, the other one wasn't. You can see the bleeding rate difference right there. This was done many years ago by our friend Chris Zura, who was at that time at Northwell Health. Now he's working with us. But you can see that that is a murine model. Let me move to the next one that I wanted to share with you. This one was done, this is a collaboration between Spark and the US Air Force. This study is done in swine, actually at the San Antonio Air Force Base. This is the study was carried out there, right there. What we've done here is a partial liver resection. You cut 10% of the liver, basically simulating a very traumatic blood loss. What I'm showing you here is this was with the liver therapy with non-implanted electrodes. On the swine, we activate the trigeminal and we activate the vagus around the ear. It's a little different on the trigeminal for the pig, but same path that in human. What you see there is two different therapies. One was delivered 10 minutes prior to the cut. The other one was delivered 24 hours before the cut. And what I'm showing you there is blood loss, cumulative blood loss per minute. There's a huge difference when you treat it and when you don't treat the animal. I guess that's why the Army is very interested in this application. Let me move. Now, let me explain how it works on the hemostasis. And again, I'm focusing on hemostasis because I believe that all the central mechanisms of action, pain and others are more familiar, crowds are more familiar with. What's happening here is when we activate the trigeminal and the vagus, we activate the NTS in the brain. That sends a signal. I'm not going to go through all the areas, but that sends a signal downward. We cannot tell you if it goes only through the vagus. It might also go through the sympathetic chain, but what we do know is it actually gets to the splenic nerve. It gets to the spleen. Platelets, which is how the therapy is delivered. 30% of the platelets always are residing in the spleen. What happens is when we activate the splenic nerve, we release norepinephrine in the spleen. Norepinephrine activates a specific type of T cell. This is the CHAD-positive T cell, which produces produces acetylcholine in close proximity with platelets. 50% roughly of platelets have or express acetylcholine receptors, alpha 7s, and those are calcium channels. What happens is when we activate the platelets via the alpha 7 receptor, platelets are inhibited, but they load up on calcium. So they do not activate while they, I don't know if people know, when there is a lot of calcium in the platelet, in the cytosol, the platelet, they activate. So this doesn't happen in the spleen. Now, those platelets are very loaded with calcium. We call them prime platelets. And these platelets are able to coagulate much quicker and much stronger. Now, we don't see any systemic effect. These platelets, as they circulate, they behave like any normal platelet. There's no coagulopathies or anything like that. Let's move to the next one. This is the device we have on market today for women. You have a device and a replaceable or disposable electrode. We are moving to a next generation where all the electronics are on the ear, basically. The same concept with a replaceable electrode. So let me show you the results of our first clinical trial in women. What I'm showing you here is heavy menstrual bleeders, two different groups, one that has a bleeding disorder, von Willebrand disease. The other one has idiopathic HMB, no known cause. What you can see is that we can lower about 60% in average bleeding in the cohort that had the bleeding disorder and about 54% on the other group. Both groups reduce the duration of menses about 20%. Here is what it looks individually. I'm showing you the best and worst cases for BWD patients and non-WD patients. You see their blood loss per day. Blue line are baselines, and the orange is treatment after treatment. Here are the overall results of that trial. We are affecting blood loss, the duration of menses, neurocognitive effects, cramps, mood disorders, gastrointestinal discomfort. And as overall menstrual symptoms, you can see on the far left there. And that is my last slide. So with that, open to any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Alejandro, do we have questions about OhmBody? Yes.
Thanks, Alejandro. Great talk. Can you talk to us a little bit about Spark's choice to pivot OhmBody directly to consumers and how that will impact your clinical path?
Sure. Thanks for the question. We of course, are a medical device company, but OhmBody itself, as it stands now, is direct to consumer. We it's a faster route to market. And we actually asked the FDA. We started by asking them to take off the market all these people without clinical data. And what they wrote back was basically, we don't have time for that. So if you want to play the game the same way, we'll play the game the same. So that is the reason why we weren't there. How is this going to affect us? It's not going to affect us. It's just going to bring the therapy faster to market. We are pursuing an FDA indication also. So we will go through FDA, not only for women, but also on the hemostasis aspect and all that. So it really doesn't affect us. It just promotes the therapy faster. Thank you for the question.
Thanks, Alejandro. I think Jojo touched on a topic we're going to revisit tomorrow during the wearable session, which is what's a medical device, what's a consumer device. So interesting insight. Time for one more quick question for Alejandro.